laughing. Yes, that's what you do when something's comedic, when something is funny. And thanks to a suggestion by a fan, I decided that this week's countdown was going to be something a little bit different. I was going to ask you guys who the top 10 funniest Transformers were. It's really weird. When the question and the suggestion was given to me, I struggled with it. I couldn't really think of anyone funny, but you guys certainly did in the voting. So we're going to sit back, relax, probably chuckle once or twice as we look at the top 10 funniest Transformers in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course subscribe, and while you're at it, baby, light them up! And hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors NL, The Autobot Family, Transformers vs. G.I. Joe vs. DC Universe vs. Marvel, and have a look for me everywhere across social media. All of those links are in the description, plus you can check out what we offer through Teespring, and check out our Patreon. And this is the top 10 funniest Transformers as voted on by, well, all of you guys. And it's amazing the breadth of votes that came in. Of course, I'm always amazed by that. We had votes roll in for characters ranging from Sunstreaker to Trailbreaker to Brains and Wheelie from the films to it's a Dino Force member. I can't pronounce his Japanese name. But it's the version that appeared on Victory, I think it was. Most people would know him as Monstructor Slog. He got a vote. To Cogman, to even Swoop. Swoop got a couple of votes. None of them made the honorable mentions, and yes, I was referring to my many notes. None of them made the honorable mentions. None of them made the countdown list. So, of course, as always, we're going to start off, and we're going to do the honorable mentions first. And the honorable mentions, this time around, I'm going to give more than 5. I know it's normally 5, but we had some voting tied. The top 3 had the same number, and then when I was looking at the bottom 2, I said, well, you know what, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's about 4 or so that had the same number of votes, so I just said, you know what, I'm going to include them all. So, for honorable mentions, these ones got votes, got a few votes, did not get enough to actually make it on the countdown. We have G1 Megatron, we have IDW's Rodimus. Some people also voted for Hot Rod. He didn't get nearly as much as specifically IDW Rodimus. And even had I taken like Hot Rod and Rodimus and put them together, they still wouldn't have enough to make it on the list. They would have just been higher on the honorable mentions. We have Skylynx. We have Animated Bumblebee, who would have been one that I definitely would have chosen. In fact, Animated Bumblebee probably would have been my number 1, to be honest with you. We had Brawn, we had Warpath, we had Skybite. Skybite was a great one. He would have been higher on my personal list. We had also Transformers Animated Blitzwing with his ever zany and crazy changing faces and changing voices. A lot of people found him to be kind of hilarious. So, what does that leave us with? That leaves us with the top 10, and who comes in at number 10? Well, number 10 takes us to the ranks of Transformers Prime with the ever-arrogant and ever-sarcastic Knockout. Now, yes, this is the Beast Hunters version of him with his green and red motif. Unfortunately, I don't have the original. As much as I'd like that, I do still kind of like this guy. And I get it, like, Knockout was always one for kind of sarcastic quips that he would say sort of behind Starscream's back, sort of behind Shockwave's back. But I think that a lot of the comedy with this guy came in an episode that would actually probably rank more as like a horror episode, and it's the one, I can't remember the name of the episode right now, but it's the one where he and Starscream are kind of on the run from a bunch of like zombie Viacons aboard the Nemesis, and he keeps wanting to tell Megatron what happened, and Starscream's like, no, we can't do that. and he keeps kind of pushing the issue. So for his quips, for his sarcasm, and really for his arrogance, especially about his paint job, he takes the number 10 slot. Number 9 is the zany and perhaps overly loyal character who does absolutely everything in the name of the royalty, that being Beast Wars Inferno. Dangerous, yes. Insane, yes. But also sort of hilarious with his like over-the-top, not enthusiasm and energy so much as his intensity is always so over-the-top. And of course, he always calls Megatron his queen. And I think part of the reason he's considered comedic is because of Megatron's reactions to him. Nevertheless, because of his zany over-the-top attitude and because of his references to the royalty and to the rather dangerous Beast Wars Megatron as his queen, he takes the number 9 slot. And number 8 takes us to, well, a character where I actually did put the votes together. Unlike the earlier example with Hot Rod and IDW, G1 Hot Rod and IDW Rodimus, if I put them together, they still would have only made it to the honorable mentions. But in this case, putting characters together resulted in someone making it to the countdown. And that would be this guy, Ratchet. Now, this is the Transformers Prime version, but there were equal votes for the Transformers Prime and the animated version, and then even a couple of votes for the G1 version. And keeping them apart, none of them would have even made the honorable mentions. Putting them together, however, did result in Ratchet making it on the countdown. So I said, if I'm putting them together here because it makes a difference, then what's the common thread among all iterations of the character, besides being a doctor? I think it's also fair to say that he's sort of a sarcastic, impatient, snobby old crank. And because of that impatience and everybody else sort of getting on his nerves, and then him, you know, especially in the Transformers Prime version, how often did he say, like, bulkhead, I needed that? You know, just his reactions, like, at his core, Ratchet always cares. Obviously, he's a doctor. But his outward kind of personality a lot of times is gruff and almost impatient and stay still while I try to fix you. And I think a lot of people find that sort of charming, maybe even sort of comedic, since this is a list of funniest characters, especially in the case of animated. I always sort of took him as like a doctor version, cranky version of like Cop. You know, a very similar sort of personality to that. Needless to say, cranky old characters are often funny, and for that reason he takes the number 8 slot. And flying in all crazy like at number 7 is what I have always sort of seen as the Transformers answer to Deadpool. That being the one guy who's not only kind of crazy, kind of outlandish, but he sort of speaks with this continuous flow of everything that's inside his head, good or bad. I'm talking, of course, about Whirl. A lot of people specifically pointed to the IDW iteration of Whirl, but overall his personality is kind of zany, kind of wacky, kind of crazy, and he sort of has no filter for a lot of his thoughts, and that sort of leads to hysterics along the way, and for that reason he takes the number 7 slot. And for number 6, we technically stick to the pages of IDW, and whether this character is asking Megatron if he's painted the entire ship purple, or telling Chrome Dome that something happened off panel, whatever that means, or whether he is pointing out phrases that he's always wanted to say, or even if he's telling someone that this isn't a habitation suite, it's better, it's a bar. One guy who always thrives when it comes to one-liners and quips has to be Swerve, and a lot of people thought that this guy, because of his little one-liners and sometimes how kind of not appropriate to the time they are, kind of helped solidify this guy at the number 6 spot. And coming in at the halfway mark, number 5, is a Decepticon that likes to talk big, even though he's very often a bit of a fraidy cat, so to speak. And he's even been asked, I don't know whether you're lying or if you're stupid, to which he gleefully replies, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Starscream. And a lot of people voted for Starscream, kind of saying, look, his personality, whatever the version, always tends to stay the same. And they sort of appreciate the fact that, you know, he talks so brave and he builds himself up as something so tough when in reality he's kind of a coward. And they also point to his groveling very often, you know, for as much as he thinks he's better than Megatron. Whenever he's put in a bit of a dire situation, he grovels with the best of them, and that's kind of humorous in and of itself. And for that reason, he takes the number 5 spot. At number 4 is someone who's appeared on several of these countdowns for various reasons. He's been among the strongest. He was even among the smartest, and he was among the most overrated. He was also, I think, among the most underrated. I'm talking, of course, about Grimlock. Me Grimlock King. Or what about, you know, me Grimlock say we on our way. Like, all of these great kind of G1 quips for this guy. But then that's not the only one that people pointed out. The RID 2015 Grimlock also got a significant number of votes. Now, I thought about lumping that Grimlock in with the G1. I didn't, and that Grimlock didn't quite make the honorable mentions, but he was like very close. He was like in the next spot. If we did put him with this guy, he would still come in at this same rank, this same position at number 4. Grimlock's always... Here's the thing, he might be overrated, but he's always good for a few laughs, almost in any iteration that he comes in. Although there have been a few where he's either been a little bit too smart or a little bit too serious, and that's kind of strayed away from the kind of lovable but strong, good-natured Dinobot that we all know and love. Now for number 3 in our top 3, I sadly don't actually have a version of this guy. The closest I have is this version. Well, actually, this isn't even the closest version of Wreckgar I have. Here's the thing, coming in at number 3 is Wreckgar, but it's specifically animated Wreckgar. Now, the G1, and I know that this is the Combiner Wars version, I kind of just use this as a standard Junkion, but Wreckgar, the G1 version had a few votes. By and far, the animated version had several, because even when the guy is nothing more than a head, he's still got a smile on his face, and he's just so good, so great at daring to be stupid, and for that reason he takes the number 3 slot. And at number 2, we have someone who tries so very hard to impress his leader. He tries so very hard to show just how strong and how much of a threat he is, but he kind of fails along the way. None other than Waspinator. And I think one of the funniest lines in all of Transformers is, why does the universe hate Waspinator? We've heard it. We know it's kind of a catchphrase of his. We know that he's really in Beast Wars, for the most part, as a source of comedic relief. He's laughed at and laughed with very often. And I think that when he finally stands up for himself near the end of the series, everybody was kind of shocked by it. It was even funnier when he, you know, said that Megatron could kiss his big yellow and kind of gets booted from behind, if you will. I was surprised that Waspinator was this high on the list, but I'm not surprised he appeared on the list. He is someone that, whether he's all together, whether he's trying to be threatening, or whether he's in bits and pieces trying to pull himself together, he's always good for a few laughs. And that leaves us with number 1. And number 1 this time is not without a bit of a caveat, maybe a little bit of controversy. Number 1 comes to us from Beast Wars, and it's the one who thinks we're all gonna die. That being Rattrap. He is noted as number 1. He got by and far the most votes. However, here's the caveat. Some of those votes, a few of them, a handful of them, really pointed to his interaction with Dinobot and how really they're a comedy duo and they're the funniest thing. Dinobot as such only got votes when put in a pairing with Rattrap. Rattrap got several more votes just by himself for his one-liners and for his kind of fatalistic view of the world and of their war. You know, not a guy that had a lot of hope, was very blunt and upfront about that. And, you know, sometimes that would give people a laugh, sometimes it would rub them the wrong way. How often did Rhinox tell Rattrap to just be quiet? I see the comedy duo between Rattrap and Dinobot. I absolutely do. But even if those votes were removed, by and far, Rattrap got the most, and for that reason, he takes the number 1 slot. And that's it. We have another countdown in the books. This one was very strange. When the question came up, and I didn't come up with this one, it was suggested. I have to be honest. Some people sometimes ask me, where would I vote? I don't know, because when I heard the question, I said, I don't think any of them are funny. It's not, when I think Transformers, I don't think comedy, personally. So I was really surprised to see what people would vote for. As the votes started to unfold, I started to see what certain people were talking about with certain characters, and I think some of them would have made my own personal list. Certainly not all of them. Would Rattrap have made my number one? I don't think so. Would he have made the list? Possibly. Anyway, let me know what you think about the list. Did your favorites make it or not? You know, I appreciate it when you come by and give me some of your extremely valuable time. Please hit the subscribe button. Stick around, man. Have some fun with us. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, there's a donate link down in the description. Of course, you can check us out on Patreon and see what we offer through Teespring. Don't forget, somehow, some way, each and every single day, man, you do make a difference. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres or the old fashioned way, baby, right here inside the videos.